The first thing I remember after waking up in that sterile white hospital room was the smell of antiseptic and the sound of his voice saying my name like a command. Eli, he whispered, as if the syllables themselves could bring me back to life. But I didn't want to come back, not to him. Not to the man who bought my affection, scheduled my time, and called it love. I turned my face toward the window, ignoring the faint tremor in my hand. You don't have to pretend anymore, Adrian, I said. Your perfect boyfriend just died in that crash. He didn't move. I could feel his gaze burning holes in my silence. The quiet of the hospital room turning heavy like oxygen had forgotten how to exist between us. When I finally looked at him, Adrian Cross, billionaire CEO, control freak, and the man who used to own my nights looked nothing like the alpha I knew. His tie was loose, his hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. You almost died, he said, voice breaking. And that's the first thing you tell me? Yeah, I said flatly, because it's the truth. Adrian and I had met a year ago, under circumstances that would make any therapist roll their eyes. He needed a boyfriend, someone charming, photogenic, and emotionally stable, for a PR campaign to save his company's reputation. I needed money fast. My brother's medical bills were eating me alive. So we made a deal. 6 months. Public appearances, hand-holding, the illusion of passion. And behind closed doors, we agreed to keep emotions off the table. But emotions are greedy bastards. They creep in through the cracks, feeding on every glance, every touch that lasts too long. Somewhere between the charity galas and the staged vacations, I forgot what was real and what was a script. And the night before the accident, I told him I loved him. He laughed. Not cruelly, but like a man who didn't know how to receive love unless it came with terms and conditions. You don't have to say that, Eli, he murmured, tracing my jaw with the kind of tenderness that made me hate him more. You're already perfect. Just stay that way. And then came the crash. A rain-soaked highway, a flash of light, metal twisting like paper, and the last thing I saw was his hand reaching for mine. 2 weeks later, I walked out of the hospital with a cane and a suitcase. I left everything he'd given me, the penthouse, the car, the tailored clothes, all of it. He showed up at my door 3 times. Once with flowers. Once with silence. Once with an apology that didn't sound like one. I'll pay for your therapy, he said. I don't need your money, I answered. Then what do you need? To stop being your product. That was the last thing I told him before I slammed the door. 3 months later, I moved to Portland. I rented a small studio above a coffee shop, got a job teaching art therapy to kids, and tried to forget the man who once owned my heartbeat. But forgetting Adrian Cross was like trying to unlearn breathing. Sometimes, I'd wake in the middle of the night from a dream, him calling my name, his voice cracking just before I woke. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of his face on a business magazine cover, eyes cold and distant as ever, and my chest would tighten. And then, one rainy afternoon, he found me. I was walking home from the art center, umbrella barely holding against the storm, when a sleek black car stopped at the curb. The tinted window rolled down, and there he was, the man I'd sworn to erase. Get in the car, Eli, he said. I froze. You're insane. His lips curved, that half-smile that used to make my pulse stutter. Probably, but I've been insane since the day you left. When I didn't move, he stepped out into the rain in a $3,000 coat that the storm didn't deserve. You disappeared, he said. His voice was shaking. No number. No address. Do you have any idea what that did to me? You mean to your image? I shot back. To me. The words hit harder than I expected. Adrian Cross didn't do vulnerability. Yet here he was, drenched, standing in the middle of the street like a man stripped of his armor. Why are you here? I asked. He took a step closer, eyes locked on mine. Because I can't fix what I broke from across the country. I should have walked away. Instead, I stood there, the rain running down my face, my heart betraying every ounce of logic. You don't get to find me and pretend we're still something, I said quietly. You made sure that ended. He looked at me like a dying man reaching for sunlight. Then let me start over, he said. We ended up in his hotel suite, neutral ground, he called it. The irony was everything about the place screamed him. Sharp lines, cold colors, perfection curated to hide chaos. He poured me coffee, his hands trembling slightly. "I've been in therapy," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "For control issues or abandonment?" He gave a low laugh. "Both, apparently." Silence stretched between us. Then he reached into his pocket and placed a photo on the table. It was of me, in the hospital bed, tubes everywhere. "I kept this," he said softly, "because that day, I realized something. You were never the one pretending." My throat closed up. "Adrian, no. You were real. You loved me for who I was, not what I had. And I was too afraid to believe it." I looked away. "That's not my problem anymore." "Maybe not," he said. "But it's mine, and I'm done running from it." He stood, moving closer, until his warmth brushed against my shoulder. "You don't owe me another chance, Eli. But if you still dream about me even once a week, then at least let me earn the right to exist in those dreams." I wanted to laugh, to call him ridiculous. But the truth? I still did. Every damn night. That evening, I didn't stay. But when he walked me to the door, he reached out hesitant, as if touching me required permission now. "I'll keep trying," he said. "For what?" "For you to believe me." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't tell him not to. The next morning, he showed up at the coffee shop across from my apartment, the same one where I spent hours sketching between teaching sessions. I didn't need to look to know he was there. Adrian Cross had a way of bending the air around him, like gravity forgot how to behave in his presence. He stood at the counter, ordered black coffee, and scanned the room until our eyes met. That half-second, God, it burned. He approached my table slowly, his movements deliberate, careful, like I was a wild animal he didn't want to scare off. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. He sat anyway. We didn't speak for a while. Just the quiet hum of jazz, rain tapping the window, and the soft clink of his cup. Finally, he said, "I bought the building." I froze. "You what?" "The coffee shop," he clarified, as if that made it any better. "And the apartments above it." Jesus Christ, Adrian. Are you stalking me or buying real estate for your conscience? He smirked faintly. "Maybe both." "You can't just, I can," he interrupted, his tone calm but heavy. "But that's not why I'm here. I didn't come to control you. I came to be close. Even if you don't want me there." The words sank in, slow and sharp. He wasn't pretending. Not anymore. Days turned into weeks. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He just stayed. Sometimes, I'd see him sitting at that same corner table, laptop open, typing quietly while I worked with the kids. He never interrupted, never asked for anything. He'd just look up when I passed by, that soft, almost hesitant smile flickering for a second before disappearing. One afternoon, I caught one of my students, little Benji, a 7-year-old with autism, drawing Adrian. "Who's that?" I asked, crouching beside him. "The man who waits," Benji said simply, coloring in the suit with careful strokes. "He looks sad." I turned toward the window. Adrian was outside, holding an umbrella over an old woman crossing the street. And for the first time, I saw him not as the man who had broken me, but as someone trying, really trying, to be better. That night, he texted me. "I didn't mean for you to find out about the building. I'll sell it if it makes you uncomfortable." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "You don't need to fix everything with money." His response came seconds later. "Then tell me how." I didn't. Not yet. Weeks later, Portland turned gray and cold. My cane gathered dust in the corner, the limp almost gone. One evening, I found myself outside his building. I told myself I was just passing by. But when the doorman smiled and said, "Mr. Cross said you might come," I realized I'd already lost that argument with myself. When the elevator doors opened, Adrian was waiting, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, cooking something that smelled like garlic and rosemary. "Eli," he said softly, almost like he didn't believe I was real. "Don't make a big deal out of it," I muttered, stepping in. He smiled, that small, quiet smile that used to undo me. Dinner. We ate in silence. I wanted to hate how good it felt, the warmth, the familiarity, the way he watched me like he was memorizing every movement. After dinner, he handed me a stack of envelopes. What's this? Letters, he said. I wrote one every week after you left. Didn't send them. Didn't think you'd read them. My heart stumbled. I opened the first one. Week 1. You took your toothbrush, your books, and the sunlight with you. The penthouse feels like a museum now. I keep checking the bed, expecting warmth that isn't there. The second one. Week 3. Therapy says love can't grow in contracts. I wish I'd known that before I built ours on one. By the 5th, my hands were shaking. Week 8. I saw a kid painting on the sidewalk today. He had your laugh. I had to stop myself from walking over. Couldn't go on. Why are you doing this? Because you deserve to know I didn't forget you, he said, voice low. Not for a single damn day. That night, something broke inside me. Not the pain, the wall I'd built around it. When he walked me to the door, I stopped. You're not the same, I said. He nodded. I'm trying not to be. And what happens if I can't forgive you? He looked straight at me. Then I'll keep forgiving myself until you can. It was the most human thing I'd ever heard from him. From that night on, we began to orbit each other again, carefully, quietly, like two planets afraid of colliding. He'd drop by the art center sometimes, pretending he was in the area. The kids adored him, even Benji, who used to hide from everyone. I caught them one day sitting on the floor, painting side by side. Adrian had a streak of blue across his cheek, and he didn't even care. You're good with them, I said after class. He shrugged. They don't care who I am. They just care that I stay. Maybe that's all anyone really wants, I murmured. He smiled, and for a fleeting second, I saw the man I used to love, not the billionaire. Not the alpha, but Adrian, the boy underneath all that armor. One evening, as we were locking up, he asked, Can I walk you home? I hesitated. You don't need to. I know, he said simply. But I want to. So we walked quiet streets, rain-soaked air, streetlights glowing like halos on wet asphalt. When we reached my building, I said, You can stop chasing ghosts now. He looked at me, eyes gentle. You're not a ghost, Eli. You're what's real. I opened my mouth to reply, but before I could, thunder cracked overhead, a sudden, heavy downpour. We laughed, running under the awning. My hair was dripping, his shirt clung to him, and for a brief, dangerous moment, everything felt like before. He reached out, brushed a raindrop from my cheek. I missed this, he whispered. My breath caught. You don't get to say that. I know, he said, voice trembling, but I'll say it anyway. And then, before I could stop myself, I kissed him. It wasn't planned, it wasn't gentle. It was messy years of silence, anger, love, and longing collapsing into a single breath. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. I'm not perfect, he murmured. Neither am I said. Then maybe we can stop pretending to be. But the universe has a twisted sense of timing. The next morning, an article hit every major business outlet. Adrian Cross and former fake lover back together, PR stunt or redemption arc? My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The art center called, reporters were at the door. My students' parents complained. Donations were pulled. And just like that, everything I'd rebuilt started to crumble. I stormed into his office, a sleek new Portland branch he'd opened recently. Cameras flashed outside, journalists shouting. He looked up from his desk, startled. Eli, you told them? I snapped. His face twisted in confusion. No. I swear, I didn't. Then who did? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flaring. Probably someone from the board. They've been watching everything I do. So I'm just another headline to them? No, he said firmly, standing. To me you're… Don't… I interrupted, voice breaking. Don't say it. You promised this time would be different. He crossed the room, but I stepped back. You wanted redemption, Adrian? Congratulations. You just destroyed the only thing I had left. And before he could answer, I walked out. He called for days. Texts, voicemails, even a letter slipped under my door. But I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure what hurt more, that the world still saw me as a lie, or that part of me still wanted to believe him. One night, as I sat alone in my studio, painting under dim light, there was a knock. When I opened the door, Adrian stood there drenched again, as if fate couldn't resist repeating itself. I found out who leaked it, he said breathlessly. It was my own PR chief. She thought getting us back in the news would save the stock price. Congratulations, I said coldly. It worked. He stepped forward, eyes desperate. I fired her. I shut down the PR division. I told them if they ever touched your name again, I'd burn the company down myself. The rawness in his voice silenced me. Eli, he said softly, I've spent my whole life controlling everything, every headline, every deal, every moment. But the only thing I ever really lost was you. And I'm done pretending that's something I can fix with money. My chest tightened. Then what do you want from me? He took a shaky breath. A chance to prove I can love you without owning you. I stared at him in the doorway, rain dripping from his hair onto my floor. He looked nothing like the man I once left behind. No suit of armor, no corporate perfection. Just a human being, trembling, drenched, and desperate enough to stand in front of me without any defense. I don't trust you, I said quietly. I know, he replied, just as quiet. But I'm not asking for trust. I'm asking for a chance to earn it. Something in his voice, the way it cracked, the way his eyes didn't hide anymore, made my chest ache in that dangerous, familiar way. Come in, I said. He sat on the couch, dripping water onto the floor, while I brought him a towel. He thanked me with a half smile, then said, You still keep the same blanket? Yeah, I murmured. You bought it. Do you hate that? I used to, I said. Now I just don't think about it. He nodded, wrapping the towel around his neck. Silence stretched between us, long and heavy, but not unbearable this time. Finally, he broke it. I went back to therapy. I raised an eyebrow. You said that before. This time, I didn't go to fix myself for someone else. I went because I couldn't keep living as the man I was. He looked down, twisting the towel in his hands. Do you know what they made me do? Write down the things I could never control. I wrote your name first. My throat went tight. Adrian. I tried to build love like a company, predictable, manageable, profitable. And you kept breaking every rule. You laughed when I tried to schedule dinner. You refused to wear what my PR team suggested. You made me human, Eli, and I didn't know how to survive that. I felt tears threaten behind my eyes, but I held them back. You didn't lose me because you were broken, Adrian. You lost me because you were too afraid to be real. He nodded slowly, his voice a whisper. Then let me be real now. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled envelope. Inside was a photo me, standing in front of the art center, surrounded by kids. I took that the day before everything blew up, he said. It reminded me why I fell for you. You weren't perfect. You were alive. You made everything else feel alive. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, almost a whisper, You really are insane. He laughed softly, the sound fragile but warm. Only when it comes to you. The storm outside calmed into a gentle drizzle. He stood to leave, but before he reached the door, I said, Don't go yet. He turned. I'm tired of hating you, I confessed. But I don't know how to stop. His gaze softened. Then let me help you learn. We walked down to the pier behind my building, the same place I used to go when sleep refused to come. The city glimmered across the river, its lights reflecting like shattered gold. He stood beside me, quiet, breathing in the cold night air. Do you remember what you told me the night before the accident? He asked. I frowned. You mean before you laughed at me? He winced. Yeah, that part. I stayed silent. You said love doesn't need an audience, he continued. I didn't understand it then. I thought love had to be seen, photographed, marketed. But standing here now, I get it. Love is this quiet, unglamorous, terrifyingly simple. His hand brushed against mine, tentative. I didn't pull away. For a while, we just stood there, listening to the water. Then he said, "When the accident happened, I thought I'd lost everything. But I didn't realize what I'd really lost until you stopped answering my calls." That silence, it changed me. I turned to face him. "You can't keep chasing me forever." He smiled faintly. "Then stop running." I exhaled, shaking my head. "You think it's that easy?" "No," he said. "I think it's worth it." And somehow that was enough. Weeks passed. Adrian didn't push this time. He didn't flood my phone with apologies. He just showed up quietly. He started volunteering at the art center cleaning brushes, helping the kids mix colors, even building new shelves when ours broke. At first, the parents were wary. Billionaire in a classroom full of paint and crayons, it sounded like a headline waiting to happen. But he never tried to prove anything. He just showed up. Every day. One afternoon, I walked in and found him on the floor with Benji again, both of them covered in blue paint. "Mr. Adrian says blue isn't sad anymore," Benji announced proudly. Adrian looked up, smiling. "He's right. Sometimes it's just the color of starting over." And for the first time in a long time, I smiled back. It wasn't easy, rebuilding something on the ruins of what we'd been. We argued. We doubted. There were days I wanted to walk away again. But every time I pulled back, Adrian didn't chase, he waited. One night, after another long day, we sat on the floor of my studio, eating takeout. Paintings leaned against every wall, my emotions splattered across canvas. He reached out, touching one, a stormy abstract of black and silver. "This one's new." "Yeah," I said. "Painted it the week after the article came out." "It's angry." It was. He studied it for a moment. "It's beautiful." I laughed softly. "You used to hate when I painted feelings you couldn't control." He met my eyes. "I used to hate anything I couldn't control. Now I'm learning that's where the good stuff lives." Something in me broke then, in the best way possible. He started staying over sometimes, not as a habit, not as a possession, just as someone who wanted to wake up beside me. He'd make coffee while I got ready for work. I'd leave doodles on his briefcase before meetings. No contracts, no pretending. Just quiet mornings and small truths. Months passed, and one afternoon, the art center held a charity exhibition, this time, my idea. All the kids' work was displayed, and at the corner of the room, one painting hung without a name. A splash of blue and gold, two figures under rain light, standing apart but reaching toward each other. Someone asked, "Who painted this?" I said, "We both did." Adrian smiled beside me, his hand brushing mine in the most casual, honest way. No one gasped. No cameras flashed, just a few people smiling, understanding that love sometimes needed no grand announcement. After the event, we walked by the river again, our ritual now. "Do you ever miss New York?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But then I remember what it took to leave." He nodded. "I sold the penthouse." I blinked. "You what?" He laughed. "Yeah, I didn't need it anymore. I'm building something new here." "Another company?" He shook his head, smiling. "A life." The word lingered between us, fragile, hopeful. We sat on the edge of the pier, legs dangling over the water. The air smelled like rain and wood and the faint sweetness of freedom. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked quietly. "The crash?" He nodded. "Sometimes," I said. "Mostly, I think about what survived." He looked at me, eyes full of something soft and deep. "I didn't deserve to survive it." "No," I said gently. "You deserved to learn from it." He smiled, the kind of smile that comes from scars finally turning into stories. He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You know, the first night I saw you in that hospital bed, I thought I'd lost my mind. You looked so peaceful, and I realized I'd never let you be at peace when you were with me." I reached out, brushing his jaw with my thumb. "You're doing better now." He laughed quietly. "You think so?" "I know so." He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. Then maybe this is what love is supposed to be, he said. Not a contract, not a performance, just staying, even when the rain won't stop. We sat there until the city lights blurred into the river. No grand speeches, no apologies left to give. Just the soft sound of water, the warmth of his hand in mine, and the quiet understanding that we'd finally made it to the other side of everything. Months later, I woke up one morning to find him in the kitchen, barefoot, humming something off-key while making pancakes. He turned when he saw me, grinning like a fool. "Morning, morning," I said, leaning on the doorway. "You're in a good mood." "Because you're here," he said simply. I laughed, shaking my head. "You're still a terrible cook." He shrugged. "You keep eating it anyway. Maybe I like the effort." He smirked. "You like me. Don't push your luck." But I was smiling, and so was he. Later that day, he kissed me before leaving for a meeting, and I stood there, watching him go, not the man I used to resent, but the man I finally completely loved. The rain started again outside, soft and familiar. I stepped onto the balcony, closing my eyes, letting it fall over me. For the first time since that crash, I felt free. Not because I left or because he found me, but because we both learned how to stay. Love didn't save us. It remade us. And in the quiet rhythm of that truth, under the Portland rain, I finally whispered the words I'd been afraid to say aloud for too long. "I forgive you." Behind me, his arms slid around my waist, his breath warm against my neck. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to regret it," Adrian whispered back. We stood there, rain and laughter and the steady heartbeat of something new, two imperfect men. No longer pretending, finally home in each other's truth. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.